everyone, welcome back to AI IRL, a podcast from CMU's AI Institute for Societal Decision Making. I'm your host, Ariel Huang, and I'm a cognitive science and animation undergrad here at Carnegie Mellon. And today, I want to talk to you guys about the difference and overlap between inspiration, retrieval, and innovation. In early 2026, there were headlines suggesting that artificial intelligence had solved Erdős problem number 728. Erdős problems are famous for being difficult in a very specific way because they were created by mathematician Paul Erdős to push the limits of the field. So Erdős problems go a little something like this. Is there a 3 uniform hypergraph on n vertices which contains at least n01 different sizes of cliques? Now, I don't know about you guys, but solving that would take me some time. But that's the point. These questions are meant to lack obvious paths to solutions, and as a result, they have this tendency to linger. They've seen generations of students, of mathematicians, of researchers, and they've come out as landmarks, not just one-and-done problems, but things that really shape how people think about an entire field. So when ChatGPT solved a previously unsolved Erdős problem, it was big, and it felt as if some threshold had been passed. Are machines moving from calculation and passive processing into actual discovery? But first, there's more to the story. The announcement had come from Kevin Whale, the vice president of a branch of OpenAI called OpenAI for Science. Rapidly following it, though, mathematicians and AI researchers have responded, stating that the problems hadn't actually been unsolved, the solutions to them had just been buried deep. So ChatGPT hadn't invented an entirely new proof, it had surfaced one. And that raises a question that extends beyond mathematics. Can finding something that might have otherwise been lost be its own kind of creation? Anyway, we can all agree that this is something that AI indisputably excels at. Searching across time, language, and discipline at a scale humans find it difficult to match. So when the system that is built for the very purpose of searching, to read across enormous archives, to connect fragments of information, to retrieve work that has slipped out of the collective human conscious, the boundary between what is reachable and what isn't starts to change. And that change can look a lot like creativity. Because yeah, maybe the ideas were always there, but the connection wasn't. And that concept sits at the center of a much larger conversation about discovery. We tend to think of discovery as being a linear process, right? We conduct experiments with goggles on and hair sticking up. We peruse textbooks after blowing the dust off of their covers. We think, deliberate, think, and debate, and then think some more, and then seemingly out of nowhere, an idea comes to us. This pure orb sort of thing is what comes to my mind. So originality seems to be this single moment, a blip in the timeline. Is it though? It might not be an isolated event. It might be a process that includes searching, recovering, reframing, connecting. So we romanticize this aha moment, but most ideas emerge from repeated exposure, from reading widely, from noticing patterns, from boredom. Friends of the pod will remember this conversation with Professor Kuhn in episode 11. But anyway, we've seen through the path of discovery throughout history that science advances through repeated experimental trials, repeated observation, iteration, and that art evolves from reference, inspiration. The way I found my own art style was by drawing the same thing over and over again. So once you've hit a certain threshold with a particular action or task, it seems, the only next step there is to adapt it and to put your own kind of spin on it. So creativity has always involved retrieval and repetition as much as novelty. And I think that what AI changes is scale. A human researcher might read dozens, maybe hundreds of papers over the course of a project, but a system can move through thousands. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't forget, it rearranges visibility by making information visible at the right moment. So this certainly puts a new spin on January's headlines. The question might not be whether or not ChatGPT invented something completely new. It may instead deepen our original understanding of originality. So instead of asking whether something has never existed before, we might ask whether it has never been connected in this way before. Maybe novelty is relational. I think that this is one of the most significant differences between the things that humans create and the things that AI creates. Machines have never, and probably will never, feel or replicate the human experience, but they can somehow still offer input and contribute to it, which is honestly pretty incredible, and maybe that is its own kind of imagination. Which suggests that creativity isn't just about who originates an idea, it's also about how ideas move. And this complicates the way we talk about creativity. It's easy to simplify the ability down to a single eureka moment, but ideas are so much more dynamic than we give them credit for. And if influence counts, then creativity starts looking much more like a collaborative act. Every idea is a mosaic. It carries traces of what came before it. How much of originality is invention? How much of it is recombination? Inspiration feels sudden a lot of the time, but that might not be because it came out of nowhere. It might instead be because we lost track of where the pieces originated. And in that sense, the line between retrieval and creativity is and has always been blurry. We just didn't have a system that could perform retrieval at such extreme scale that the scaffolding of creativity became visible. For most of history, progress was limited not only by intelligence, but by access. Knowledge doesn't move cleanly throughout the world. Papers go unsighted, fields develop in parallel without noticing each other. Language barriers, paywalls, disciplinary boundaries, all of these things can make existing ideas functionally invisible. Unknown doesn't always mean non-existent, just unreachable. So discovery, in many cases, often meant proximity. So who gets the credit? If an idea existed but remained effectively invisible, who gets credit when it becomes visible? The first person to think of it, or the first person to connect it in a way that others can use? Is being legible more important than being first? And I don't want to lose the human element in all the headlines. We don't create just to make something new or to pass time. We create because we need an outlet for meaning. We create to process and to feel understood and to communicate. Artificial intelligence can rearrange information in ways that even surpass humans at times, but they don't experience the stakes of what they produce. And that doesn't make their output useless, it just makes their role different. And I think one of the biggest problems in our current climate is the lack of clarity about what role we want AI to play in our society, and a lack of clarity about what it is that makes human work absolutely irreplaceable. AI might function less like an innovator and more like an amplifier. As we've already established, it can identify patterns faster, go through sources more rapidly, search for even more relevant material, and that all can redirect human effort. Instead of spending our time doing what AI excels at, we can spend more time doing what we excel at. You know, things like critical thinking, creating meaning, feeling the stakes of our work, deciding which ideas deserve attention. Maybe discovery isn't a single flash, but a threshold. Maybe it's the moment when enough pieces become visible at once. I mean, the dots only connect looking back, right? So discovery might be something that is inevitable once you get to a certain point. So whether or not an AI solved an Erdős problem might be less important than what the reaction revealed. We are renegotiating our definition of originality in real time. We're trying to decide who creativity belongs to, the generator, the connector, the interpreter. Here's a rule of thumb. When you can't decide whether something is one thing or another, it's probably both. And in this case, creativity probably belongs to all three. Innovation becomes distributed, and the future of creativity will be, I think, less about humans versus machines, and more about layered creation, systems retrieving, people interpreting, communities creating meaning. It's always been like that. We've seen it happen with the printing press, with search engines, the internet, digital creative tools. It's happening again, but as always, we get to decide what matters. And as long as that's true, originality isn't disappearing, it's expanding. Thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode of AI IRL. Submit any questions you have for AI SEM experts through a Google form on our website, and I will also put the link to it in the episode description. So yeah, don't hesitate to engage with the topics we explore, get your questions answered in future episodes, and follow our podcast. Join us on the journey to uncovering the ever-changing role of AI in creating a better future for all.